Welcome, everyone, to the Continental Classic Selection Special. Tony Schiavone, along with our CEO and General Manager, Tony Khan. Well, here today, we will announce the 12 participants in the round-robin tournament that AEW fans have been asking for years. 12 of AEW's top stars competing in matches in cities across North America. And Tony, what an exciting time.
Tony, this is so exciting. I cannot wait for tonight, the start of the Continental Classic tournament later tonight in Chicago on AEW Dynamite. This is going to be the best tournament in AEW history, right. And many have said they believe it could be one of the best tournaments in wrestling history. We have got an amazing field. We've announced 4 participants already. Right. By the end of today's special, we'll know all 12 fighters in this great tournament. It's going to be amazing. Tony, let's tell them more about the Continental Classic starting tonight.
Okay, as Tony said, the tournament kicks off tonight in Chicago on AEW Dynamite on TBS, live from the Wintrust Arena, 8/7 Central. The tournament continues this Saturday in Pittsburgh on AEW Collision, live on TNT. Week 2 of the tournament will be held in Minneapolis and Erie, Pennsylvania. Week 3 on 2 nights in Montreal. Week 4 with 2 nights in the Dallas Metroplex. The 5th week will have matches in Oklahoma City and San Antonio, Texas. The finals of the group will be held and decided in Orlando on December 27th. And at AEW World's End pay-per-view on December 30th from the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, we will crown the very first AEW Continental Classic winner. So we have some great wrestling cities ready to host this event. And Tony, coming off the success we've had this past weekend in Los Angeles at Full Gear, this is a great way to wrap up what's been a phenomenal year in AEW.
Absolutely. It's been the biggest year in AEW history. We've had some of our best events and our biggest success ever, including breaking the world record for the most tickets ever sold for any pro wrestling show at AEW All In London at Wembley Stadium. 81,035 tickets sold. And now we're only days away from the on sale for next year's Wembley Stadium, AEW All In. We're coming back to London with the biggest event in pro wrestling. Tickets on sale December 1st, but you don't have to wait till then. You can sign up now and be a part of the pre-sale November 27th at Ticketmaster.co.uk.
That's right. As a matter of fact, that's this coming Monday for pre-sales coming up.
It's
on
a
the
huge,
27th.
huge day in pro wrestling.
Well, you mentioned All In. As we found out at Full Gear, Eddie Kingston, who is the ROH World Champion and the New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Openweight Champion, is going all in for the tournament, putting up both championships as well, making this a one-of-a-kind tournament, Tony.
Absolutely, Tony. It's historic. I can only think back to such tournaments in wrestling history like the J Crown, where
right. Champions
would throw their championships in to increase the prestige of an already very prestigious tournament with this great field, these high stakes, the prize money, appearing on AEW TV week in, week out, competing against the best wrestlers in the world. This is going to be amazing, Tony, and I can't wait for the finals at World's End, right. And I can't wait for tonight to kick this thing off. And I'm very excited now to reveal all 12 participants in the Continental Classic to all the great wrestling fans here right now.
Okay, let's get to the 12 who will vie for the championship of the Continental Classic. We have 2 groups, the blue group and the gold group.
First of all, leading off the blue group, he's already entered his name into the field officially. We've heard from him. Ladies and gentlemen, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. The American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, against all odds, the first participant in the inaugural Continental Classic.
This is the kind of tournament that I've been wanting to do my entire career.
Arguably the best in the world.
When I told my wife that I planned on entering the Continental Classic, the first thing she said is, why? You just fractured your orbital bone in 2 places. Your vision in your left eye is blurry. You still don't have full strength in your arm that you broke in June. After everything you've done in your career, why? Because I love professional wrestling. I love the struggle. The Continental Classic takes a bunch of things I wanted to accomplish in my last full-time year as a professional wrestler and wraps them all up into one. The toughest wrestlers in the world. 3 titles on the line, including the Ring of Honor World Championship, which turned me into the wrestler I am today, and I want it back. My time is running out, so I'm swinging for the fences. Is this tournament going to be hard? Yeah. But meaningful things are rarely easy.
Wow, that from Bryan Danielson. You heard what the tournament means to him.
Absolutely. It's definitely something that means so much to Bryan Danielson, to be competing against the best wrestlers in the world, to be in this round-robin format week in, week out, fighting the best, and with high stakes. To be a champion in 3 different promotions that all represent something very important to Bryan. Right. To go to New Japan Pro Wrestling and become a champion, a company where Bryan has competed and where Bryan is going to compete again very soon in the Tokyo Dome.
Right.
To be a champion in Ring of Honor, to be the world champion, where Bryan was often considered to be the best world champion ever, to recapture that title, to then unify both of these championships with the AEW Continental Classic Championship, to be the first AEW Continental champion, and to unify 3 titles across 3 promotions. It means something really, really special to Bryan Danielson. You heard that. But also these injuries, what Bryan's battled through, it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And he will be ready, as he says, for this tournament. All right, Tony, we've got 2 groups, as we mentioned. Let's go to the gold group. Who's the first one we can talk about?
Well, speaking of the Blackpool Combat Club, let's lead off the gold group with another top wrestler, another one of AEW's best stars, Jon Moxley.
There is no one in either group of this tournament field that is more highly decorated in AEW than Jon Moxley. Moxley's recent history in AEW has been one of peaks and valleys. Now that he's back at 100%, Mox may be on a mission in the Continental Classic to prove that he is the same, if not better, Jon Moxley that we've seen over the past few years.
Moxley's intensity, experience, and proclivity towards violence makes him a heavy threat in this tournament.
His experience as a big game performer puts him at the forefront as a favorite in the Continental Classic.
Jon Moxley, former AEW World Champion, former AEW International Champion. He brings violence to the ring, and he's got to be considered a force in this tournament, Tony.
I think Jon Moxley is considered a force in every match, any time he steps in the ring, and Jon Moxley is probably the most decorated star in the history of AEW. And when you look at the field of this tournament now, he's the 5th competitor we've named, and you know now this tournament is just absolutely stacked.
Sure.
It's going to have the top stars, and it doesn't get any bigger than Jon Moxley when you talk about big stars. But speaking of top stars, another one of the biggest stars in AEW, somebody who's on a roll, coming off a huge win at Full Gear in the Texas Death Match. Right. Somebody who's as hot as anybody in pro wrestling right now. In the gold group, Swerve Strickland.
At Full Gear, Swerve Strickland proved to the world that he is the most driven and perhaps most dangerous man in all of professional wrestling.
As of late, Strickland has shown that he is willing to do anything to be victorious, to be on top.
His hard-hitting style and willingness to get dirty make him so dangerous in this tournament. Swerve knows that he has our attention right now, and we could be entering the Swerve era.
Swerve Strickland is red hot, Tony. As you mentioned, he won the Texas Death Match this past Sunday at Full Gear. Momentum's very important, I would think, going into this tournament.
Absolutely. Swerve is red hot. One of the best wrestlers in the world right now. But it's important to remember, Swerve might not be 100% going into this tournament, coming off the Texas Death Match. Texas Death Matches will take something off your career every time, especially one of the best Texas Death Matches of all time.
That's crazy.
Against one of the top wrestlers ever in AEW. But Swerve Strickland is absolutely as hot as anybody in pro wrestling right now, and Swerve is one of the top names to watch going into the Continental Classic tonight. And speaking of dangerous wrestlers, people that will do anything to win a match, unpredictable wrestlers, another top star going into the gold group tonight, Rush.
One of the toughest athletes, bar none, on the AEW male roster.
Rush has already inflicted so much damage on some of the most respected wrestlers in the game today.
Very heavy-handed and a very heavy mean streak.
His level of intensity and his brutal style mean that he could very easily eliminate any one of his opponents in record time.
And his temper isn't too shabby either.
Rush is an international star that could be catapulted to new heights in the Continental Classic.
Rush, one of the more dominant wrestlers that we have here in AEW, one of the more dominant wrestlers around the world. But you mentioned in this tournament, some of the stipulations, no seconds at ringside, you got to be there by yourself. Rush always has people around him. May be a little difficult for him in the tournament.
Well, I think Rush is a very, very tough wrestler. I don't think he needs outside interference to win a match, but in this tournament, people at ringside, outside interference, they will be completely banned. Rush is unpredictable, though. He'll do anything to win a match, as we've said. And he has said when you mess with the bull, you get the horns. And everybody's going to be gunning for Rush in this exciting tournament field. And speaking of this great competition and the great names, we had announced earlier he's going to be fighting in this tournament. He's one of the most inspirational wrestlers. He's one of the most popular wrestlers. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Briscoe.
Believe it or not, there's been multiple times in my life that I've been described as a very continental individual. So what that means for the rest of the participants in the Continental Classic is y'all is in trouble. Because I'm going to get up, eat my continental breakfast. I'm going to hop in my Lincoln Continental, drive to the arena, and I'm whooping everybody up in there. Ain't nobody going to stop me because ain't nobody can stop me. You understand what I'm saying? I'm taking this whole thing home, baby. Bring back to Sandy Fort, Delaware, and can't nobody stop me. Ha! 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 Ha!
Tony, Mark Briscoe has had a very emotional year. Everybody knows the story by now, but he is a kid who has been great in tag team wrestling. He's been very, very successful here in singles competition. It's great that he's in this tournament.
Absolutely. Mark Briscoe is somebody who loves tough competition. He loves to fight, and he's one of the most popular wrestlers in AEW or anywhere in the world. This tournament means a lot to him, and he is very excited to get in there and fight against the toughest wrestlers, the best wrestlers on the planet.
Right.
Mark Briscoe is somebody that we can all rally around and support. This tournament also comes and lapses across the anniversary of his late great brother Jay Briscoe's final pro wrestling match.
Right.
And speaking of people close to the late great Jay Briscoe, and speaking of people that have a lot to do with Mark Briscoe, the next competitor in the field is somebody who had one of the most emotional matches in the history of AEW, wrestling against Mark Briscoe in the tribute match to Jay Briscoe, and that is a former world champion himself, Jay Lethal.
Jay Lethal brings so much experience to this tournament. A man very familiar with holding championship gold. The man knows how to get the job done.
Lethal knows what it takes to grind out victories. Like the rest of this field, Lethal is also extremely credible.
Jay Lethal, a great champion in singles competition, and you mentioned those seconds at ringside who have to go it alone. And here's a guy who has plenty of help in each and every match he's had here in AEW.
Well, Jay Lethal is a great wrestler,
sure,
but he has gotten very reliant on outside interference, and as you said, people at ringside helping him win these matches. There's going to be none of that. There's going to be nobody at ringside, no outside interference. So Jay Lethal, I think he's going to have to get back to basics and what really made him a great pro wrestler in the first place. I'm very excited about it. And in that gold group, there's a lot of great wrestlers, and I think Jay Lethal will have some great matches. And when he locks up with Mark Briscoe, you can believe it'll be an emotional one.
Okay, we have one more in the gold group, Tony, and who is that?
And that is one of the best wrestlers on the planet, keeping with the theme of the top stars in this great tournament, competing in the gold group, starting tonight on AEW Dynamite on TBS right here in Chicago, Switchblade Jay White.
And you can all breathe with the Switchblade.
As a veteran of 4 G1 Climax tournaments in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Jay White is more familiar with how to pace himself in a round-robin setting than any other entrant.
Jay White has held titles all over the globe. White has proven his determination to be the guy.
Whether leading the Bullet Club or the Bang Bang Gang, Jay's athleticism and precision make this Switchblade a top contender in this tournament.
And if you ain't down with that, I got 2 words for you.
So there you have it. 6 members of the gold group, some of the greatest professional wrestlers in the world in that group at the Continental Classic. But Tony, we have more because we have the blue group.
Absolutely, Tony. And the blue group is also going to be tremendous. We've already announced Bryan Danielson,
right,
part of the blue group. And this field is just absolutely stacked. We have top competition, including top international stars joining the blue group, Andrade El Idolo.
We saw you pick up a big win last week on Collision. Does this mean you're happy with your new representation?
I'm so happy because look at CJ es la más caliente.
Andrade, in my opinion, is the best wrestler. I mean, he is third-generation wrestling royalty. He has been wrestling since he's been 12 years old. I mean, he is born to do this. And that's why I have entered him into the Continental Classic.
Andrade is ready for this tournament. I guarantee that. There is no doubt in my mind he can and will go deep.
Andrade brings an explosive luchador style with a very solid technical wrestling foundation. His experience and mastery makes Andrade El Idolo one of the top contenders for the AEW Continental Classic.
Andrade El Idolo now has C.J. Perry as his manager, and he could go far in this tournament, Tony.
Well, Andrade El Idolo can go far on his skills in any tournament against anybody.
Sure.
But C.J. won't be able to come to ringside. She's not going to be able to interfere in the matches. She could help Andrade prepare, and I think Andrade El Idolo, just based on his great wrestling skills, his talent, I think Andrade El Idolo in particular has been on fire since he came to AEW Collision this summer.
Right.
And when you look at his history, he's been a great champion in wrestling, and he's a perfect example of somebody I think it would mean a lot to win these championships, particularly when you consider his great history in New Japan Pro Wrestling, to be a champion there and to be the first man ever to unify championships across these three great promotions, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and AEW. I think Andrade El Idolo would be a strong candidate to win the Continental Classic.
Andrade El Idolo and Bryan Danielson in the blue group. Who else we have in the blue group, Tony?
Well, speaking of great champions and top stars, somebody who's one of the toughest wrestlers on the planet, somebody who will make for a great potential winner for the Continental Classic, and again, somebody who would be a very strong champion with great history that could be the man to tie these three championships together, and that's Brody King from the House of Black.
Big bad Brody King, one of the leaders of the House of Black, at 6'5" and 285 pounds. Not only is he such a massive, imposing man, but to see a big man move the way that Brody King does makes him so unpredictable for any of his opponents.
Number one in violence, and perhaps the most physically imposing competitor in the entire tournament. While the House of Black can typically be found at his side, Brody will have to walk the path of the Continental Classic alone, and it appears that he will welcome the challenge.
Brody King has been a great trios champion in AEW with the House of Black, and he's been wrestling a lot as a trios or a tag team wrestler. Do you think that's going to hurt him in this tournament?
Well, I think Brody King is somebody who, frankly, could take on anybody head-to-head. He's a monster, and we've seen he's a great singles wrestler. He won the first ever Royal Rampage, and I think Brody King, in a fight against anybody, has a pretty good chance. And we've seen him very successful in tag team competition and trios competition. And when he puts his mind to singles competition, I think Brody King can also beat anybody. He's another person with great history with these promotions, including somebody who's been a champion in Ring of Honor, somebody who's been a champion in AEW and would love to bring home a championship in New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's Brody King of the House of Black.
Also part of the Continental Classic in the blue group, talking about big, great athletes. How about this next one, Tony?
Well, speaking of great champions, speaking of people with a great history, the former Ring of Honor world champion, Claudio Castagnoli.
Pound for pound, the strongest athlete, not just in his block or even the entire tournament, but all of professional wrestling. On top of that, Claudio Castagnoli's ability to draw on European technique and finesse make him the toughest tournament matchup to prepare for.
This man never takes a day off or doesn't look his absolute best while doing it. Claudio is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler.
Claudio is always ready to compete at the highest level and also exemplifies the power, the strength, and the motor he has had for a wrestler for all these years at such a massive size.
Add the facts that he is sharing his block with fellow Blackpool Combat Club member Bryan Danielson and longtime rival Eddie Kingston, and Claudio Castagnoli may be the most highly motivated entrant in this tournament.
As a former Ring of Honor world champion and consistently testing his mettle alongside his Blackpool Combat Club brothers, Claudio is one any man would be dreading facing in this tournament.
Claudio Castagnoli, one of the great athletes in all of AEW. I've often said that athletic ability trumps all when it comes to wrestling matches. Claudio has the ability, the athletic ability to go all the way to the final.
Absolutely, Tony. And Claudio Castagnoli is a former Ring of Honor World Champion 2 times and somebody that would be the epitome of a great champion carrying these championships. Claudio Castagnoli is exactly the kind of great pro wrestler who could unify championships across 3 promotions. Sure. He's one of the best. The Blackpool Combat Club is well represented across this tournament with Claudio Castagnoli in the blue group, and he also has got to be considered one of the favorites against anybody in this field.
All right, we've had some great champions and some great former champions, and now let's take a look at who else is in the field in the blue group.
Well, speaking of exciting wrestlers, somebody the crowd has really gotten behind and somebody who has shown they can compete against the best and holds wins against some of the top stars in AEW. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a wrestler, he's a sports entertainer, he's Daniel Garcia.
Some might look at Daniel Garcia as a guy who might not go as far because of his experience level and age compared to most of the athletes in the tourney. Well, I think it's actually an advantage for Garcia. In my opinion, I think we might see Daniel Garcia dancing his way right into the finals.
Daniel Garcia was touted as one to watch early on in his career. Now, this is the perfect tournament to remind the world why he's such a huge part of this company and what many would call the future of AEW. The former Ring of Honor Pure Champion is so smooth in the ring, and dancing and entertainment aside, Garcia is an absolute badass, certainly not one to sleep on in this tournament.
Long shot, dark horse, underdog. Daniel Garcia has heard it all, and he doesn't care. As the youngest tournament entrant in his group, it could be easy to count Daniel Garcia out before the Continental Classic even begins. But that's exactly what Garcia wants. Garcia has shocked the world with massive upsets in the past, and there is every indication that he is ready to do so again during the Continental Classic.
And now, Tony, let's finish out the blue group with a man who raised the stakes for this tournament.
Absolutely. When he put these championships on the line, he added much prestige to an already very prestigious tournament. He is the New Japan Strong Openweight Champion. He's the Ring of Honor World Champion. But now the winner of this tournament will hold those championships. But he has got to be considered, again, among the great favorites in this great field. And that is the Mad King, Eddie Kingston.
It doesn't get more real than Eddie Kingston.
Talk about having the ability to compete banged up and battle-tested. Look no further than Eddie Kingston.
And I want to up the game a little bit. I want to put my life's work on the line.
He is so confident in his life's work that he has also put both of his titles on the line.
So the winner of the tournament will become the first ever Triple Crown champion, because guess what? The winner of the tournament also gets the Continental Championship.
The Mad King putting his ROH title and New Japan Openweight title on the line also. I'm telling you right now, be careful of Kingston.
What an incredible field. 12 of the top stars in AEW, 2 groups, blue, gold group. It all starts tonight here in Chicago and on TBS on AEW Dynamite, 8, 7 Central. Tony, let's talk about some of the rules for this tournament that concludes, of course, at AEW World's End on December 30th.
Well, as you mentioned, Tony, the tournament concludes at the pay-per-view December 30th on Long Island, AEW World's End, and until then, we'll have group stage matches. It starts tonight in Chicago on AEW Dynamite with matches with a 20-minute time limit.
Okay.
There will be 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. As we've said, everybody is banned from ringside. There will be no outside interference possible or allowed for these matches. It's going to be a great competition with the best stars. I can't wait for this great tournament to start tonight, Tony. And given the great field and given the high stakes, I thought it would be very appropriate for us to be joined by the Ring of Honor World Champion, the New Japan Strong Openweight Champion, the man who raised the stakes for this tournament and added a lot of prestige to an already very prestigious tournament field. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mad King, Eddie Kingston.
Eddie?
Yeah, Giovanni, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, good to see you, brother.
I'm here.
Okay.
Just got off the plane, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you certainly did raise the stakes for this tournament, and I heard you say you kind of called out everybody. Come on, guys, let's have a great tournament.
Yeah, no, why not? Let's make this the best tournament in America, best tournament in pro wrestling. And why not raise the stakes? But I guess maybe Mr. Khan, you can clarify what I said, because I got a couple phone calls from different offices. So.
Yeah, well, to be clear, when you said the championship's on the line every match, Eddie, to some extent it is, because all these matches count, and what happens in the group stage matches determines who goes to the group finals, and the winners of the group finals will meet at World's End on pay-per-view. So when you said you feel your championships are on the line in every match, to some extent they are. I think every match is going to be very important, and to some extent I think every match is going to be very, very, very difficult. It's a really tough field, and everybody in your group and really everybody in both groups is a great wrestler with a great track record.
No, yeah, of course it's going to be hard, because you know what I mean, AEW is the top. And AEW brings in the best professional wrestlers, best athletes, whatever you want to call it. Me, I'm just a fighter. I'm not a pro wrestler. I'm just a fighter. But why not? Why not do this? Why not make it become a Triple Crown championship?
Well, when you talked about great tournaments in the past, like the J Crown, something we've discussed where champions put their championships in and added to the prestige of the tournament, I think this is something along those lines with a great field. Certainly, I believe in American wrestling tournament history, this is one of the best groups, yourself included, and what you've done to raise the prestige of the tournament, it can't be understated. It's a huge, huge risk you're taking. I have to note that the tournament finals take place in your home state of New York, not too far from where you grew up.
Yeah.
And, of course, it was also in New York where you unified these championships, becoming the first person ever to hold New Japan Pro Wrestling Gold and Ring of Honor Gold at the same time, where you became a world champion. And now you're putting it all on the line, your life's work, as you've said, for a chance to be a champion in AEW as well.
Yeah, put it real simple. I broke in, and I wanted to be a champion anywhere I was at. But the main goal was always to be a champion in New Japan. And then the next goal was to be a champion, a world champion. And that's what happened with the Ring of Honor title. And now, the newest goal is to be a champion here in AEW, a place I call home. You know, a place that I, ride and die with. So why not make it a Triple Crown? Like I said, the guys who I've looked up to in this business, such as Kenta Kobashi and Toshiaki Kawada and Taue and Masawa and Jun Akiyama, they were all Triple Crown champions. And that's what I want to do, and that's what the goal I'm reaching for.
Absolutely, Eddie. And the person who wins this tournament will embody the great fighting spirit of those incredible champions. And what you've done here, putting your championships on the line, it's very brave. And when you look at the field and the people in this tournament, it's some of the best wrestlers in the world just in your group, some top competition. What are your thoughts on the tournament?
I don't care who it is in my group or who I'm fighting. I'm there to win. Like you said, this is my life's work. This is all I have. All I've ever had was professional wrestling. So I'm not gonna, let this go without a fight. Guys are gonna have to lay me down, like really put me out to beat me. So good luck to everybody. Y'all gonna need it.
Well, it's going to be a great tournament. The action starts tonight on TBS, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central here in Chicago. The field is incredible, as we've said. There's been so much hype on this competition. There's so much prestige, as we've said. It's going to be a great night of wrestling tonight on TBS, Tony, where the matches start.
The matches start tonight on TBS, as Tony said, live from the Wintrust Arena. Thank you, Tony Khan. It's going to be a great tournament that kicks off tonight. Eddie Kingston, good luck to you, my friend.
No, thank you.
Continental Classic begins tonight on Thanksgiving Eve, live on TBS on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite with 3 matches in the Gold Group. Tonight, Roosh takes on Switchblade Jay White. Swerve Strickland goes one-on-one against Jay Lethal, and Jon Moxley will battle Mark Briscoe. The Continental Classic continues this Saturday live on AEW Collision on TNT from Pittsburgh as part of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend with 2 Blue Group matches. Daniel Garcia collides with Claudio Castagnoli. Eddie Kingston will battle Brody King. Don't miss the Continental Classic, kicking off live tonight, Thanksgiving Eve from Chicago on TBS, and continuing this Saturday on Collision on TNT.